direct result of our members. And I'll tell you the backstory before we get into it. One of our members last year took a sabbatical. And when he took the sabbatical, he came back and he said, look, he had a situation and he felt that he couldn't speak to anyone. And as a member of an organization claiming to be supportive of the community, that bothered me. It bothered me because I was saying, well, if he's a member, well, a group of men, we hang out every 2 weeks. We go out and we have meals together. We have fun together. And he couldn't feel he could talk to one of us. That's not right. And on that day, and that was in October of last year, we decided to have this event. Why has it taken so long? It's taken so long because resources are thin. Finding a room is expensive in London. Yep. I was blown away by a former member who, when I told him about the reason for the delay, he said to me, you know what, Paul, you should reach out to us. Because even though we're not members anymore, we love what you do. He's in the room, I won't embarrass him. Yeah? He doesn't know how I felt when he said that to me. So this is the organization that has brought this to you today. The 100 Black Men is trying to do more than just mentor. We're about community change. We're about trying to change things. And 8 weeks ago, you can correct me if I'm wrong, a good friend of ours committed suicide. And when we went to the night, we were all just standing around just saying, we didn't know. That's all we just stood around saying. We didn't know. This brother was a vibrant motivator of people. Yeah, when I met him, I weighed 26 stone. When I stopped meeting him, I weighed 22. That's the sort of work he did with us. Changed lives in abundance. The video reel at his night was like 10 minutes long, just with his people who he's worked with. We have to have events like this. And we're here tonight not to solve, to fix, but to start to understand why Black men's mental health doesn't seem to be as in focus as it needs to be. I was blown away when I found out that men on a whole, between 25 and 49, suicide is the biggest killer. I didn't know. And I guess if you're wandering around just daily doing your thing, why would I know? We need to know, we need to talk about it. And that's why we're here tonight. Okay, format is very simple and very straightforward. We didn't want a panel at the front. The amount of talking I'm doing now is almost as much as I want to do for the rest of the night. I don't want to do no more. As I was saying before, we have a number of practitioners in the room who come from different walks of life, different areas of practice. I know nothing about what we're going to embark upon. What I'd really like to do is be able to take a seat right there and just listen. Yeah? So what we're going to do, we're going to share the night between people who have what I like to call technical, formal, professional experience in mental health, and I'm going to say specifically men's mental health, and people who have experienced via partners, children, friends, the ravages of mental health. One of the practitioners pointed out to me that mental health has a very broad spectrum. Great. Let's talk about as much as you want to talk about. We don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to limit everybody to talk. But what I do want is for people to feel free to have their voice. I didn't say this in any of the promos, but I'll say this now. This is not intended to be a one-off event. We want to do it at least quarterly, and we want it to migrate from this format probably into more signposting. There's always room for us to vent and for us to express ourselves, but we'd also like to be able to move to a point where people say, well, if I go to that event, I might meet someone who I can talk to, and we do a lot more signposting. So the format might change. But for tonight, this is what's going to work. So, where do we begin? I think we begin by asking the question, which certainly I've been asking myself, and my friends, we've been asking ourselves quite a lot. And I'm going to defer to you guys, all of you. Everybody feel free, just indicate to me. Don't have to raise your hands, not school. In the 100, we have a tradition. When you speak, you stand up. If you sit down, we say we can't hear you. Yeah? Helps our young people to build confidence. So that's the way we roll. If you don't feel inclined to stand up, I'll just stare at you, but you don't have to. So the question is, and I want your thoughts on this, both in terms of the practitioners in the room and otherwise. Why does it appear that mental health generally, especially in the black community, seems to be something we don't really talk about much? Anybody? Sir. When you speak tonight, initially you only have a maximum of 3 minutes.
Yes, first I'd like to give thanks for 100 Black Men hosting this event here. I think I've been to 2 of the events, so thoroughly give thanks for being here. It's quite interesting because it happens that I'm involved in an organization called Men with Voices. And one of the challenges we find is that why is it men don't talk? Because women them talk, they talk to them girlfriend upon the phone and such and such. And men them don't talk. But when it comes to the whole thing about mental health, and sometimes I was watching something online, and it happens that you find, like especially in the Caribbean, that a man of mental health there seems a madman or him crazy and nothing to do with him and them thing there. So it's more of a stigma, so to speak. So I think that's one of the reasons, they associate some kind of crazy man. Keep away from him, my idiot or whatever. And I think that's something what's in our conscious all the time.
Anyone
else? I think, and speaking from personal experience, I think within the black community, we all have a lot of pride. And because we all have a lot of pride, we care very much about our public face. Yeah. And 2 of the biggest triggers of mental health problems is the inability to cope with stressful situations and dealing with anxiety. And I find particularly with black men, we're not open about those things because we perceive them to be weaknesses. And so when we bottle these things up, it tends to get worse and then it manifests in all sorts of ways. So what we need to realize is that we're all human beings. We can all only cope with so much and not be so afraid to express or show our vulnerabilities.
Pete here. Do you want to introduce yourself as well and what you do?
Yeah. Evening, everyone. My name is Peter Smith. I'm an occupational therapist by profession. I've also experienced mental health and attempted suicide in my youth. So I'm here today representing Generation Next. These are my colleagues, Natasha, Jamie. Basically, I work in a mental health institute. It's a acute for people that experience mental health for the first time. I can say that the real issues facing young black men like myself, when I was 23, I was a young father, struggling. I'm an identical twin. My twin brother had certain issues himself. But the real thing is the struggle as, being a black person in today's society, especially England, anywhere in around the world, there's oppression. So where things can be difficult, where you might not be able to get a good job or have good housing and all those comes with difficulties in terms of your health. Now, where I work in the Seton Hackney Centre for Mental Health, there is an overrepresentation of black people in there, and I work in there because I used to be in that same hospital that I'm working at the moment. So I've recovered. I had numerous admissions. I was brought in by police many times. But I come to this university to study, this London South Bank University, and obtain my OT degree. But I've gone there and I've worked in that hospital to provide support for not just black people, but for everyone, of course. But I see the struggle because there's a lot of young black males. In the ward I work in, there's young black males that they experience psychosis. So psychosis is a form of mental health where people can be deemed as delusional or psychotic, where they're detached from reality, so to speak. And sometimes what's given to the patients are sort of the support and that they need in terms of talking, just trying to find out. And it's a cultural thing, how black people in general, culturally, how we live, sometimes is not really generally understood in the mental health system, so that makes it difficult as well. And so when they get out into the community, the stigma in terms of having mental health in the first place, and then you have your family and friends who don't understand it, it makes it even more difficult. But I don't want to talk too much, but you can come back to me. But yeah, basically, it's the oppression with also the understanding of the self-love is missing. And if there was more self-love and understanding and talking, and I think that's the main important thing, to be able to talk about the issues that we have and not to be looked on. The gentleman said that, yeah, correctly, that as a black man, you have to be seen as strong and big, and people will respect you for that. And if you're not strong and big, then you're seen to be weak, and that in itself is painful for the individual, where they internalize it and then they can't manage.
Anyone else? We're still on the same question. Anyone else?
First of all, to give thanks, as the gentleman said, for such an event. It's my first time in coming. My name is Nathaniel Palmer. I'm 32. I've worked in mental health for 11 years. I recently left the South West London St George's Mental Health Trust. Started out as a receptionist, just doing admin. Didn't really get involved in mental health until my aunt ended up coming in as someone who wanted to manage her alcohol problem after losing or divorcing from her husband. And so it hit home. I've had experience, just as the gentleman said, with my own mental health, of trying to manage it. I lost my father when I was 11 years old. So I went through bereavement, as you do, with losing a loved one. So I had low points in my life, and still the struggles as a black person are still challenging today. So there are high and low points all the time. But also wanted to give thanks to the gentleman that just spoke as well, because for what he's been through, not knowing the full details, but to where he is now, it's recognizing that he is a survivor of mental health. And for that, give big compliments, because, yeah. I mean, getting to the question, I think the reason why it's not spoken about too much, or it's more of a taboo, is because the gravity and the weight of mental health is extraordinary across not just, well, especially across the black community, but worldwide. Mental health is still, the way I like to phrase it, is in its baby steps. It's not yet walking, because it is a taboo. Yeah, it's something that's not spoken about. And as the gentleman said as well, just previously speaking, it is about oppression. And if we think about the levels of oppression that black people have been through, and I quite rightly and boldly say that it's that us as a community have been through the biggest hardship of humanity. I studied black history at the Croydon Supplementary Education Project under Robin Walker, the Black History Man. And as you learn about black history, not just slavery, but black history, it's all of that is taken away from us. We've stripped of our identity, You know, it's by design, in my opinion. And it's the fact that we need to bring back some knowledge, some education about where we come from. And it, as the gentleman said as well, it's about having that conversation. And I agree wholeheartedly with him that it's about talking about the, what we're going through, but also understanding the different regions. So if we look at the European region, what interest they have of helping the black community or any other community which isn't their own, is something, from my experience, 11 years, is not on their agenda. So to me, it's about us, and grateful for 100 Black Men alongside many other types of supporting services that are trying to do their thing, Black Thrive, Galaxy FM. There's certain organizations that are trying to pull together, but it's quite right. The struggle of bringing people in, the resources, the money, is a difficult one. But yeah, it's about the fact that it's a weighty subject, and to then open it up, you pull it in the Houses of Parliament. No one cares. No one's sitting down and having that conversation because it's too big of an issue.
Okay.
So, yeah.
What I want to ask now, sorry, gentleman there, before we move on to the next point.
Thank you. We've mentioned stigma and pride and weakness, and they're all very key. But there's also the sort of general question that even if you wanted to talk about it, who would you talk to? Because we're not really set up in the community to do that. And if you wanted to approach a professional, in the back of your mind, you know, you'd be thinking, would I end up like Sean Rigg or someone like that, who you go to the authorities, or your family seeks help, police come. We remember back in the 70s, the concept of the liquid cosh. You know, how is mental health treated? Am I going to end up with getting injections? Am I actually going to end up sicker than if I just kept it inside? There's also, I think, leading on from the last speaker, in terms of general society, I'm not a mental health professional, but I've been in touch with some who are. And I remember one story being told to me about a 16-year-old boy who was in distress one day, and he was saying, they're coming to attack me. And the worker he was with actually thought it was a kind of a gangs issue. So he's busy shutting the doors, shutting the windows, trying to keep this young lad safe. And the guy's saying, they're coming to get me, they're coming to get me. And the worker's saying, don't worry, we've secured the building, no one can get you. And he's saying, no, they're coming to get me, they're coming to get me. They're coming to get me through the television. And it was like, who's coming to get you? The whites are coming to get me. And it was like, you know, I think there's so many levels to this. I think in that particular situation, it was about the kind of pressures of the images he was seeing coming through the screen, particularly where black people were absent, and the kind of roles in which they were present. But I think it's a very wide societal issue that we need to look at, and our position in that society, and how actually we as a community can create a sense of identity of who we are. So hearing an echo there. And using that as a basis from which we're then able to develop the right kind of therapies to support each other. And once it's known about that, then there'll be growing confidence, I think, in the community in terms of coming forward. But it's about making that step.
Okay, what I'd like to do very quickly, following on from what the gentleman just said, there are a number of practitioners in the room. And whether by design or by accident, depends on what you believe, they all seem to come from different angles. And what I want to do is I want to quickly go through all the people who are actually practitioners so they can introduce themselves. They can give us a snippet of what they do, because I can imagine for some of them it's massive. Just a snippet of what they do and a quick thought from them, sort of to begin to to answer the question. We're going to answer it in full later on. But to begin to answer the question, just a short, well, what can we do? We're not answering it yet, but just the practitioners. I'm going to start with this gentleman here. Put you on the spot?
A little bit.
Don't worry about it.
It's all right.
You'll do fine.
Yeah. Oh, so you're just going to ask? Sorry.
Just who you are, what it is you do.
Well, my name's Jamie, and I just recently joined Natasha and Peter in their vision of Generation Next. So I don't have any real mental health background in terms of expertise or anything like that, but it's something that really touched me because I have a personal experience in my family where my cousin had an episode, and it kind of opened my mind to what is going on in this society. So, and through friends, this opportunity has come. So I'm just here to support, and whatever I can do, lend my talents to this organisation and help, because there's a lot of black people, especially black guys, that are going through certain things, and it's deeper than what we see, and I'm just trying to help.
Okay, Natasha.
Thank you.
See, I remember Natasha's name. Natasha and Pete came in together.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for allowing me to be present this evening. My name's Natasha Cohen. I'm a psychiatric social worker. I've been practicing for 20 years, and I'm also a holistic therapist. Mental health is a massive subject. There's many words that come to mind, my mind anyway. Ego, pride, prejudice, lack of education. It's a massive subject. Anyway, with regards to what we do, you were asking me what I do as a practitioner. I help people in the community. So I work with people and their families once they've had a psychotic episode or they're experiencing any mental hardships. I try and work with them to prevent them from being readmitted. I try and work with them through their recovery. I also work with them while they're in hospitals. So I work with them through the sectioning processes. I work with them while they're in the midst of their psychosis, when they're detached from reality, trying to bring them through it, encouraging them, showing them that there is light at the tunnel, they can get better. I'm there for them, and I will walk the walk with them. It's not an easy job, and I get dismayed with the government. I get dismayed with the organisations that I work for, because at the moment I am working for the NHS. I set up Generation Next with the help of Peter and Jamie because I want to break away from government organisations. I want to work independently, holistically, with the person at the centre, working with them in their time of need, working with them towards what they want to gain, how they want to recover. It's all about that person. Every single person's psychotic episode is different. Every person's experience of mental health is different. No two people will ever be the same. No two episodes will ever be the same. The triggers may well be, but the experiences are very different.
Okay, thank you. If you see me hustling people along, I'm not being overly impolite, but the note I've just been handed tells me that we only have till 9 o'clock, which is not what I was told originally, but don't worry about it. We can do this again. Yep, but we're going to crack on. So everybody who I spoke to before, a little bit shorter now. Okay, sir.
Hi, my name's Wayne Mertins Brown. I'm a counsellor. I sit under that umbrella term of talking therapist. There are many different names, psychologists, psychotherapists, etc. I'm a talking therapist, and I work with individuals one-to-one. I work with couples, and I work with groups. And the idea is we come to some improvement in mental health through a talking therapy style of work.
Oh, thanks for having me. My name is Theresa Hatchett. I am a photographer and a citizen educator towards Wellbeing. I've had personal experience for the last 55 years of mental health with members of my family, and I came to my work because one by one, lots of members of my family, every generation started to have one or two people having episodes and going through the rigmarole of the system. So I feel that the work I do is towards well-being, so we prevent them having those episodes. And I work with people to help them to stay present, to stay in the moment, because in the moment is when you find the cure or the help. But if we're distracted by the media and all of the things that we have now, we're not in the moment. So I can talk a bit more later, but that's what I do.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Sorry, I know the next one.
If you don't mind, I'd like to stand here because it's a bit close. Sorry. Okay, so my name's Kwabena. My background is counselling. It's person-centred counselling. However, I decided to move away from, working with people who are having direct psychotic episodes. I do like to work with people who have, in a state of depression, which is the anxieties that we suffer daily as black people. But what I do tend to do is I prefer to work with people outside in nature. So I coined a phrase which is using nature as a bridge to well-being, because it is about that disconnect. Certainly you can tell by the accent I'm not from up these parts, and it's been quite difficult living in a big city. There seems to be a lot of pressure being in the big city. Everyone's rushing. So I do, personally myself, I deal with people who, will do a talking therapy, one-to-one, but I also do other things with them. So I would do meditation for healing, okay? Because we want different types of healing. We need, whether it's one of the things with the name of the solo independent thing that I run, it's called Healing Fields Awuku. Obviously, healing fields being the fields of healing, whether it be out in nature. Awuku, because I recognize that there's a spiritual element that is very much lost. And whilst I've been up here, I've made my attempt to connect to my own spiritual understanding, my own Africanness, if you will. And though I have a long way, okay, so in other words, the reason why I've said that is because Awuku being that when you work with me, you're working also with your spiritual aspect, and that is however you see yourself spiritually comes into the work that I do.
Thank you very much. Can I come back to you a second? Okay, what we want to do now, we want to talk, there's two people in the room who previously identified themselves to me as people who have either experienced stuff themselves or they experience it through another party. First of all, I want to thank them before they speak, because it's not an easy topic to raise, which we've already established. And it's not an easy topic to raise in front of a group of strangers. Yeah? And so they have the same time constraint, unfortunately. So.
Good evening. My name is Joanna Brown. Thank you very much, 100 Black Men, for inviting me. I am a family lawyer by profession, but I'm here tonight to talk about my late son, Alexander Paul, who died in June 2017 of brain tumour. Alexander was from a very young age, he was athletic, he was intelligent, sporty, and he could do whatever he put his hand to, he excelled. And when he was in his teenage years, he was going to be a footballer, but then decided that he was scouted for Fulham, but decided he wanted to go to university. At that stage, around about 14, 15, he developed a passion for poetry. And round about that time, my mother was going through cancer and eventually died of cancer. So when my son was about 15, I did notice a change in his personality. Alexander was the type of person, we came from a community, Gypsy Hill, which is inner London. My boys were always being stopped and searched. And he grew up with the injustices of the society that a lot of our young black men experience. And at the time, I thought, okay, I could see a change in his countenance. And I said, look, Alexander, I know you've lost your mother, your grandmother. Have some counselling. And he said to me, no, Mum, I've got my own way of dealing with it. So eventually his countenance changed and he became more confident. Cut long story short, he went to university, studying at Warwick, doing politics and international studies. At the age of 18, he had the opportunity of standing on the Conservative Party conference platform in front of, 1,000 people, talking about the injustices of stop and search as he had experienced it. He wasn't politically to the right, but he felt that it was something that needed to be brought to the government's attention. Sadly, he got brain cancer and he died. Shortly after he died, I came across, I knew he wrote poems, but I didn't know the extent. There was over 300 poems of everything: oppression, the police, the black guys on the street, gun and knife crime, so many areas he wrote about. And I realized when he said to me, I have my own way of dealing with it. Yes, it brought tears to my eyes at the time, because I didn't realize the extent of how much he went through a depression. I've heard a lot of things that's said here: pride of the black man, we don't talk. His father was the type of man, boys, you don't cry, you hold it in. There's a lot of poems. There's a book over there, Climbing Clouds, Catching Comets, that captures his poetry. And he talked about a lot of poems why he can't cry. He's seen guys on the street killed, stabbed, shot. He doesn't cry for them. I mean, that's very sad. We talk about the insensitivity that a lot of the people in terrorist gangs go through. It's a nurturing of the society and how we tell our young men that they have to be tough and strong. His way of dealing with that was to find a passion. His passion was poetry. And he opened up himself and just got out the stresses and the anxiety. So yes, he had depression, but he found a way, other than through talking therapies, which is very useful, but he found a way of dealing with that. And I think that a lot of us need to also recognize, and it's very difficult when someone like my son always had a smile, tall, athletic, a leader, natural leader. Everyone loved him. It was easy to think that his life was wonderful. But behind closed doors, he had serious depression. He talks about talking to a wall, nobody listening to him. He talks about isolation. He talks about the lack of the father. And if the father is not around, the street will father the children. At 15, he wrote about all these things. Sorry, I'm getting quite emotional. So
I got you.
That is...
Do my Oprah bit now.
Yes, that is Alexander Paul, Climbing Clouds, Catching Comets, and that's why I'm here to contribute towards this discussion.
We want to move it on a little bit more, and I want to ask a gentleman who promised me that he would contribute, because he's probably the prime reason why we're having this event. As I said before, it upset me that this gentleman, one of our members, didn't feel he had an environment in which he could speak. We know him, and I think what I want to ask him to talk to us about is how he felt not feeling he had someone in a group. He's a public person. He's reasonably well known. He's a great guy. Again, like I said about the other guy, a motivator of people. And yet he didn't feel he had someone to. And I wanted, if he'd share on that sort of level for us.
Thank you. I was waiting for a clap. Okay, cool. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dean Williams. And right now, I do this all the time, but I am mad nervous right now, because when you're talking about your emotions, it does something totally different to you. So when I'm talking in schools, colleges, universities, I'm shutting it down, and it's fantastic. But where I'm at right now, I can't tell you, I am so nervous. And I know Paul said that he wants me to talk about, how I felt, but I need to go backwards to be able to go forward. So 2018, I broke up with my girlfriend, who I love to death. And that did something to me emotionally, which I couldn't understand. I've broken up with other people before, but it's been lightweight, like I just moved on. But this one for me, literally just shattered my heart, and it took me to a dark, dark, dark place. So as a man, I was like, you know what, I could deal with this. This is nothing. logically, I can deal with this. So in my head, I said, okay, what can you do right now to be able to deal with this situation? What can you do to come over this? So logically, I'm a man. So I thought, all right, you know what? Pour all your love that you have into the young people that you mentor. So I went to NCS Challenge. I was part of the NCS Challenge. I was the program leader, and I poured everything that I had. And it's actually, you know, when you mentor, okay, you learn more from the young people than you do for yourself, or you pour into them. Because one of the young people came to me and said, hey, because of you, I've never had a father in my life or uncle, anyone looked up to me. And because of you, I want to say to you that I love you. And I was like, wow. I realized that I can love other people, but I couldn't love myself. And this is what the young people were showing me. And I was like, I realized there and then I didn't love me. I hated me so much. Hence why I pushed away my partner and everything else. And logically, I went back into my head. Logically, I said, how can I deal with this? How can I deal with this? Okay, I need to come over this. I need to get over this. Like, this is stupid. Like, why am I feeling like this? Okay, like, you're doing well for yourself. Like, at the time, my business was about to go 6 figures. I was just voted top 50 best business consultants in the UK. I just got my business book out. I'm actually, like, on the surface, I'm doing well. But inside, I was just messed up. So I said, okay, you know what? For the first time, I sat down. I said, you know what? You can't deal with this. This is beyond you. And I reached out. I actually reached out to people, and I said, okay, you know what? Humbled myself. I need help. And when I did that, and the response I actually got back was poor. Like, I reached out to people. I did reach out to people in the 100, and the best I got was links. Like, only one person in the whole 100 actually phoned me up and said, hey, look, I'm going to take you out. And I was big up to my guy, Lewis Howe. He actually took me out and goes, you know what, speak to me. And I was able to speak to him, okay, on that level. And then after, a lady named, I call Mummy Pauline, okay, she said, no, you know what, come to me, I'm going to sit with you. And for me personally, I've always been blessed with having phenomenal black women in my life. So I always big up black women, because that's what's always got me through everything that I got through. And she sat me down, she goes, no, you can't do this by yourself. And she goes, you know what, I want you to go and see a counsellor. And even when I went to go and see the counsellor, on the first day I went to go and see the counsellor, I thought to myself, right, this guy don't know what he's doing, yo. I told you I have a problem. Why are we not fixing the problem? He goes, you know what? Your problem is not that you can't fix things. The problem is, okay, you're always fixing things and you're not sitting in your emotions. That took me 2 months to even conceptualize what the hell that actually meant. I was logically, I was amazing. I'm a superstar, okay? But emotionally, I didn't know how to deal with my emotion. And this is why I kept pushing away all the relationships I was in. I kept pushing everything away because I wanted to deal with it logically. So for myself personally, I wanted to really reach out to people, get the help. So I went counselling, and thank God that really allowed me to tap into my emotional side to get that balance. Because one thing I realized, even though I was a male, I wasn't a man. Because I wasn't balanced emotionally and logically, so therefore I could tap into my truth. So from there, anyway, through my pain, and the first thing I said to my counselor, I said, you know what, once I get to the other side where I can actually really give back, I want to do something for the community. So myself, Fabulous Marvelous Marvin over there, and Vinika, so we're actually putting on a massive event in the 13th of October called the State of the Black Man, and you're going to be seeing this. And I want you, just don't, ladies, I'm talking to you first, please bring every single man in your family down. Men, bring your friends down, because I want, like, as Paul said, one of the things we're going to be doing is signposting. One of the key things, okay, which hurt me to death, okay, I didn't know where to go. And I was thinking, I'm a black man, I'm asking for help, and I don't know where to go. And that killed me. And I said, you know what? If I'm going through this and I'm supposed to be in a great community, how many of my other black brothers are going through this and not getting the support? I'm going to stop there because you just come on my stage. But okay, cool.
You know, I'm not going to even pretend that I wasn't personally hurt when Dean first told me what he told me. That bothered me big time. As I said to someone in the other room, what bothered me about it was that the 100 Black Men say on our label that we're here to uplift our community. And if we can't catch our brother, we might as well just go home. We might as well just stop fronting and go home. I've not given 18 years of my time to an organization where Dean should not be able to talk to one of us, and that our response was not adequate. We can't fix everything, but our response could have been better. That's why you're sitting here today. Yeah? We can get things wrong, but we're not getting it wrong a second time. Yeah? What I want to kind of hustle us through to is to start to talk about the big question. Me and my friend Howard, we had this conversation at the wake for the gentleman who passed away. We didn't know. So I want to talk to people now about two things. One, from your experiences, whether as a practitioner or as a parent or as someone who has experienced it themselves, and this is open to the floor, by the way. Everybody, I'd love you to speak. I want to know, what are the signs? And I want to talk on two levels. I want to talk about what are the signs that hindsight now tells us, oh boy, that was a big sign. How did I miss that? And then I want to talk, and this is really for the practitioners in the room, I want to talk about, once we've heard us lay people talking about the signs, in your practice, what are the sort of signs that we should be able to more than likely take a look at? I'm not yet talking about what we do. We're going to come to that. It's very important what we then do when we see those signs. So I'm going to start with Howard because he's my mate, and I can.
Good evening. Thank you, 100, for putting this event on. We really needed this. I came here to because it was about why don't black men talk. So there's 2 points I want to bring up here. Sometimes we don't know that we're having mental issues. Sometimes we're not aware of it. Another thing is social media. We're very good with WhatsApp. So you can be WhatsApping somebody all the time, but you're not seeing these people. They're actually on WhatsApp. Isolation, to me, and I'm talking from experience now, because I didn't expect to say this. I was in a dark, dark place a few years ago. One group of people was thinking, I'm over there with that group of people. This group of people think I'm over there with that group of people. It was great because they all think I was with somebody else. They left me alone. I could hide on my own. WhatsApp, everybody thought I was doing stuff. But I was in a dark place, but they never knew this. Now, I'm always good. I'm brilliant at what I do. I'm going to be successful. I'm getting there. But other people, they're not getting there. And if they're not getting there and they're in that dark place, who's helping them? If you know people, just reach out. Say hello. I haven't seen you for ages. Come for lunch.
What did that dark place look like? Because we want to be talking about the signs. What did it look like? Now that I'm hoping you've come out of that dark place, how would you characterize it?
It was a desperate place. You're in a bubble that you can breathe, but you can't get out of it. But you keep having these sessions where I feel really good. Yeah, I'm brilliant. I can do it. So you're up 1 minute, but then suddenly you're down again. And sometimes you're down, sometimes and you're up and you're up and you're down. But the next thing you know, you raise your head up. 6 weeks have gone. 2 months have gone. A year's gone. You ain't seen nobody. But people still think you're out there doing your stuff. But you're getting deeper and deeper into this area. It feels, you just feel very light, very dark. It's a dark place. Very dark place.
Thank you. Still talking about the signs that we may have missed and that we now acknowledged were there.
Looking back, and it relates more to teenagers, because I think a lot of our problems, not just men, but women, start when we're young, the society, the environment that we're in. But looking back, especially with the young black men, they're going through that metamorphosis from boys to men. And it's very easy to think that, oh, they're monosyllabic because they're just teenagers and they're growing, they're growing into manhood, changes in personality. When you look back, you can then think, that was a depression, but maybe at the time you thought it's just teenage boys. But teenage boys have problems, and we do need to encourage them to talk. It's easier for people who are surrounded by young men or older men, but, girlfriends, mothers, sometimes we just miss the signs because we're not talking. How's your day? Yeah, it's fine. And then you just leave them. We need to get them to open up, talk a lot more, especially the teenagers, so they can talk about the things at school that are depressing them, in the environment, the pressures of youth gangs trying to get them involved into crime, or girlfriends, emotions first, getting your heart broken, all these things. Boys hide. So it is about talking, but recognizing that if there's a personality change, is it bereavement or is it depression? We need to be more open to signs.
Okay. I want the mic to go to the young lady behind Tony. I'll come to Tony in a second. And again, we want to talk about the signs. She's one of our practitioners. Just quickly, who you are, what you do, and then what are sort of signs that we might need to see, we should be looking for. And then I'm going to come to some more of our practitioners as well.
Hello, my name's Desiree Shaw. I'm a CBT therapist and a hypnotherapist and counsellor. I work mainly with men. I'm a practitioner at the Priory. There is a massive issue with black men and depression. What are the signs? I deal with specifically cognitive consequences and action tendencies, which is basically thought patterns and what they actually do. I create self-help videos to demonstrate what signs actually look like, so that people can actually watch the video and say, I've seen that, I recognize that, this is what this person is going through. So in terms of depression, the two main factors are anxiety and depression. Anxiety is about a perceived threat, and it's about seeing the perceived threat as much bigger and much worse than it is. As young black men in schools and living in society, the perceived threat is constant, and it grows on a daily basis, so they cannot determine reality, which is why there's so many different things that happen at the same time. So you've got anxiety, and then you've got depression, and depression is about loss and failure, feeling like a failure, feeling as though you've failed or you're going to fail. So if you have anxiety and you have depression, you are predisposed to severe disturbance. Then you've got the difficulty of talking about it. So nobody teaches you how to express how you feel, because negative emotions are deemed as irrational and totally bad and not for society. So there's a lot of pushing down, and the pushing down comes with drugs and alcohol, getting involved in gangs, trying to get away from the perceived threat, which is why the perceived threat is such a problem. Because anything is a perceived threat. Not having any money, not getting a job, not being able to go to work, not being able to do anything. That's a perceived threat, which then leads to a feeling of loss and failure. So what I do, I work at the Priory, which I got to say, most of my clients are men, but very, very few are black. I'll be honest. Most of my clients are mainly white. And it is the Priory as well, so it's quite high end up in the city. However, I do run a private practice, which is more focused on being able to meet the needs of people. I also work with young black men, ex-gang crime related, crossing county lines. So there's a lot of things going on which are ignored sometimes because we just think we can't figure out how to help them. Ultimately, being a counsellor and now being a CBT therapist, there is a structure which actually works really, really well. So what I do to give back to the community is I create self-help videos to support people who can't gain access to therapy, and that's really...
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Tony? Jeff? Guys, I want to get as many people in as possible, and we do have a couple more topics that we want to cover. So if I'm hustling you along, it's not that I'm rude. I can be, but that's not that. That's what I am today. I'm just trying to get everybody to want to speak in. And I said, Tony, then this lady here.
Just wanted to, because we're talking a lot about mental health, but I just wanted to put out that distinction between mental health, which we all have, and mental ill health, right, which is when you kind of go into a situation. One of the things about mental ill health, and I think that if we're all honest, I think it's a fact anyhow, that everybody passes through mental ill health at some stage or the other. It's not abnormal. The difference is how long we stay in there, and that's my point, right? It's about, when you talk about the signs, it's not that like a person's depressed, it's not that a person is feeling low, it's not that a person's doing strange things, it's how often they do it and how long they stay in that situation. So it's being able to distinguish the difference between, is this person just going through a normal situation, which is kind of like difficult, or are they entering into a state of depression or a state of anxiety? So it's like being aware of the frequency and the length of.
As Jeff makes his way across the room to this lady here, I'm just going to say something, because both what Tony and Ms. Shaw said just resonated with me, because I remember back in the 90s when I was made redundant for the first time ever, and I was unemployed. And I don't say this to boast, but I used to earn a lot of money. And I just thought, well, I'll get another job. 9 months later, no job had turned up. And the lots of money was gone. Because, you know, the first 2 months you think, I'll get a job next month. Then it was gone. And I found myself getting very obsessive. Destroyed my relationship at the time completely. And when I'm listening to the thing about it can be just about anxiety, I used to wake up in the morning at 7 o'clock and log on to a website called JobServe, and I would be there until Star Trek started at 7 o'clock in the night. And I spent my entire day clicking refresh, refresh, refresh to apply for jobs. And I can only but, you know, listen to what you just said. Just imagine that if I didn't have what I had around me, you know, I still destroyed my relationship, but it's so easy. It's so easy.
Thank you. I just want to really share a kind of honesty about an experience that I've had, a realization. When I said what I do, I use nature to do what I do, but one of the gifts is being in the present moment. You really get to understand that what we accept as the world and the way we live is artificial and it's wrong. And we're not mentally ill. We have got no protector of our nest and no nurturer of our nest. Most of the time, somebody's missing. And we have nobody telling us it's okay. We've had all these years post-traumatic slave syndrome. Why should we be okay with all of that? Why should we have a situation where the father is missing, an uncle is missing, a grandfather is missing, a mother is missing, a sister is missing? Why should we accept all of that as normal and just get up and go on? So I say we have to understand that the nest is being raided. And until we get back to protecting that nest, those little children who start in junior school showing the first signs, they've got a mother, they come home angry, there's not a father, they're going to start really young, and they're starting younger. And we're pretending that it's perfectly fine to be like that. No, it's not. It's unacceptable. It's too much low level expected of us, and we need to say enough.
Sorry, could we go to Jonathan and then Courtney? Straight, I know all these people's names, isn't it? Go to Jonathan and Courtney, then I'm going to hustle us again on to the next topic.
Okay, I'll try and be quick. I mean, I'm talking from experience. I've been through my own things, and it'll take me all night if I was to go through it again. But there aren't always clear signs. I can't say someone behaves in this manner, they're going through something. I can talk from experience in terms of when I was going through things, whenever someone would ask me, how are you doing? I'm doing fine. How's work? It's great. That's it. No follow-up question, nothing like that. It's very easy to put on a public face. And you need to spend time with those closest to you. And someone, I think this gentleman talked about an example of WhatsApp, instant messaging. Everything's fast and instant these days. And we just, okay, great, you're doing great, fine. No, we need to spend time with people. We need to engage with them and ask them again, how are you doing? Everyone's got a definition, a personal definition of success, of what success looks like. That could be relationship, it could be academic, it could be professional success. And I find that depression starts from when you feel like a failure, when you feel like you failed to meet that definition of success, as it certainly did with me. And so one sign you could look for is if there has been a change in someone's life. You know that person, and they tell you, oh, they're fine. inquire some more. I would say that. Depression is a tricky thing to define if you haven't been through it. It's not always easy to identify. There's a great video that I actually sent to my parents when I was going through a few things, and they sort of understood what I was going through a bit better. It's on YouTube. It's called My Black Dog. It's a little short animated film, but it explains depression very well. So if anyone doesn't quite understand.
Jonathan, I'll put it on my page.
Yep.
So other people can share it. Courtney? No, Courtney's okay. I'll come to you, sir.
Thank you, 100, for inviting me here. So I'm Courtney. I'm the founder of Father to Father. And I'm going to go talk about a personal experience 2 years ago. Short, yeah. So 2 years ago, I walked in my son's primary school, witnessed the head teacher pinning down my son, 6-year-old son. That triggered me off. But I think the key thing for me at that time was the fact that because I was the founder of Father to Father, I thought this couldn't happen to me. So it was the controlling. I was trying to control everything. Rather than sharing with my wife what I was going through and sharing with others, I thought, you know what, I'm the leader. How could this happen to my son? How could I allow this to happen to my son? So that whole depression of feeling like a failure as a dad kicked in, the anxiety kicked in. So again, working in a school myself, you know, I was going to the school, and, you know, every minute I was looking out for black boys and what the teachers was doing. I was very hypersensitive to the situation. But the key for me back then as well was actually going to counselling and sharing. And we mentioned about post-traumatic slave syndrome, and just quickly, what the council was able to do for me was to have me go back to my childhood and experience the trauma I'd gone through my childhood. And when I spoke to my mum about what I went through she then said to me, but Courtney, when I took your dad in the 70s to the doctors, they tried to get him to go back to his childhood. He smashed up the whole, and this was in Jamaica, he smashed up the whole doctor surgery. So I started looking at this thing in terms of violence and trauma going way back, way back, way back. And I always say to people, my simple thought is that, you know what, Grenfell, God rest their souls, the first thing we talked about was therapy and counselling. Where have we, in terms of 400 years, had therapy and counselling? Yeah? So hence why we see effects of our boys and what's going on in the community. So that's what I wanted to add to that thing.
I have to go to the gentleman there, and then the sister here, and I'm going to move to the next section. If you put your hand up. Oh, God.
Yeah.
Short.
Thank you. My name's David Njai. I'm a counsellor, and I work across the board. Just very quickly, I work with young people in the school. I run a counselling service there, and as you can imagine, it's full. I also work with young professional football players, and I also work with adults. But just going back to the signs, yes, there is no definitive list that says this is definitely a case of depression, but there are some signs to look out for. Lack of motivation. Our thinking sometimes becomes very black and white, thinking from a cognitive perspective. Have we started to lose pleasure in things that we gain pleasure in? These are noticeable signs. Are we finding that we're ruminating a lot, the worry that goes on and on in our head? Are we getting what we perceive as decent sleep but still waking up tired? These are all signs that we can begin to think about and ask those questions. And somebody also mentioned about, has there been a significant perhaps change in one's life? Absolutely. And so as a therapist, when I'm working, these are questions I ask because they do tell you an awful lot. I don't use the word depression. I talk maybe about low mood because there are so many labels out there. I think we need to just work with whoever it is in front of us, because as human beings, we are complex by nature, and there is no one box that we sit in. And we have so many labels for what is really normal human behavior.
Thank you so
much. I could go on, but I'm sorry.
Thank you. Lady, just a lady there. Everybody, you're going to have to get shorter. He was short You're going to get shorter.
Hi everyone. My name's Lynn Scott. I'm actually a life coach and I also deal with neuro-linguistic programming. I basically wanted to go on to what this gentleman said. I wanted to follow on to what he said, also what this gentleman has said as well. But I deal from forgiveness. I go right back. That's my theme for the people I counsel. I counsel a lot of young men as well, roughly between 28 to 45. I even have 55-year-old men now coming and sitting down and speaking with me. But I generally take someone all the way back to the womb, to the beginning. And let's deal with the aggression and the anxieties and the angers that happen there. And then we can see who the person is today and why they're being affected by everyday living today.
Thank you so much.
That's very important, is going back.
And then if you put your hand up, I'm just going to blank you. Yeah? Because I have people here that I need to talk to again.
Hi, I'm Pablo Imani.
Pablo Imani? Stand up, man.
Sorry.
I've never met this man in real life.
Okay, I'm Pablo Imani. I've worked with young people for a very long time, and I'm founder of African Yoga. I had a list in my head when you first asked that question about the signs, and they've all kind of gone, so I can give you one. One particular thing that really came to mind is that when you have a conversation in your head about somebody that you're angry at, but you don't actually speak to the person, that is a sign. When you're in a resentful state of mind, when you're angry, but you don't express it to the actual object or person or event or whatever it is, you don't express it, but you're talking about it in your head, it's a sure sign.
Thank you so much. Okay. Time pressure. So what we're going to do now is, and I want to sort of narrow this to our practitioners. I want to talk, each of you, very quickly. You don't have to, if you don't want to, but it would help us if you topped off the conversation about signs. So I'm asking you a question now. At what point should I be walking towards one of you? What do you think? Maybe not. But I want to know, what do you think should be that point where Paul says, you know what, Paul, you need help. But I also want you to quickly address, if I see that in someone else, if I see that thing in someone else, and I get worried because they're standing, do I approach them? And if I do, how? I know that's 3 questions. You don't have to answer all of them, but I want you to help us here. I'm going to start with Natasha.
Well, I want to highlight, as well as the negative signs, there are positive signs of becoming unwell. People, you have to look at a person as an individual, just as this gentleman was saying. And positive signs could be going out spending loads of money, like money's a bottomless pit, having a good time, enjoying themselves more than they usually do. They're losing their inhibitions, more sexually active, sleeping around with the whole town. That hyperactivity, that's a sign, but quite often we just think, oh, they're just being promiscuous, they're just being a dog, whatever. It can be a sign that they're lost, so look out for that. With regards of when to seek help or what to ask them, you can say an open-ended question, not, are you okay? Yes, I'm fine. I noticed that you've been a bit promiscuous lately. What's going on? Giving them that opportunity, letting them know that you're actually interested, because they might not think that you really care.
And I don't want to interrupt Natasha, but it links back to what this lady said, because it's not normal.
Right.
Yeah, especially for us guys, it's not normal. And that's what this lady was saying, that these low-level behaviors that we're assigning as normal, they're not.
Okay, and when should you seek help, or where should you go? I know it's alien, but the GP is one area. a close family member who you know that they get on with, that's another person, their best friend. Or just saying to them, I am here for you. It doesn't matter what time of the day or night, I am here. It doesn't matter, I'm not judging you.
Thank you. Gentleman there.
Yeah, it's a really interesting debate and discussion. I'm going to talk from my perspective as a counsellor. What I see and what is a thread throughout the clients that I see, it's anger. And it's a cliche, but it's absolutely true. It's anger. Clients are coming and saying, I'm angry all the time. I'm having outbursts. I'm taking it out on people when I feel it's not really them. I'm getting extremely abusive in my car. It comes out in anger a lot of the time. Where you go, what do you do with it? Yeah, GP was mentioned. But I also want to bring in something else here, which is that GPs don't always get it right. And a lot of the support networks don't get it right. So it's not a one-stop shop here. You may have to look around. You may have to find the right place to go, the right medication. It doesn't always work first time, but a lot of people will turn away from it if it goes wrong in the first instance. You've got to have some perseverance. And with regards to what you do, I mean, I'm a therapist. I've trained for a long time, and I know a lot of therapists. And one of the things we do with me and my friends and my circle, when we say, how are you? We take a breath before answering. How am I? No, I'm feeling a bit shaky today. We check in with each other all the time. I have dinner with friends every Monday. Nothing comes in place of that. And the first thing we do as we sit down is check in. And it's not about polite social interaction of saying, oh, you know, everything's good, you know. No, how are you? What's going on? Make that part of a normal interaction, normal conversation.
Thank you so much. Lady there, then we're going to go for sure. The same question. What do we do? Where do we draw the line as to, hey, maybe this isn't 100% normal?
Okay, one of the things I think is really important is to understand that we're humans. We seem to be getting dragged away with all these likes and all these friends. We can only deal with a few people and get to know a few people. How we relate to people is through trust and consent. I've got a brother, he's been schizophrenic since he was 19. I was his older sister, I'm a year older. He's 59, so I've been looking after him and being his good friend for nearly 60 years. We can't have tons of friends. We have to spend time to get to know people, and then we can find out what we can do to help them. That people out there don't know these people. All they've got is a list of tick boxes. You know the person you care about. And when you get to know them and you have trust with them, they will give you consent. And until then, you can't really do much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. What was the question? The question was, you don't have to answer all three. The question was, is there a point at which I should be saying to myself, whether on my own behalf or someone else's behalf, they need help? If so, how do I approach that? How do I approach that? I think we want to talk a little bit about how do we approach that, because the answers, great as they've been, we haven't touched that one. So how do I approach it? My mate Tony, I've known Tony since the first day of the 100. If he's looking a bit shaky, how do I approach him?
Okay, so just like you said over there about anger, absolutely right. It does show up in anger quite a lot, and the perceived threat. So often the sign will be either fear of the unknown, constant worrying, they can't order their thoughts, possibly speaking too fast or even speaking too slowly, okay? Getting too much attention on social media. Promiscuity is a massive issue. It's on the rise, and I've noticed it in the therapy room. Sex addiction is something which is growing. And this is something to actually notice when somebody is being too promiscuous, when it is continuing on where they just can't stop and constantly having different partners. How to approach it? Well, everybody is unique, individual, so it does take time, and you have to be prepared for them to push you out, because they will close the door on you and they don't want to hear it, because nobody wants to be faced with the actual fact that they're going through a problem. So it's about being patient, it's about being calm, it's about letting them know that you understand and you're here to listen. No matter how many times they close the door on you actually just doing a gentle knock and just trying to get in there and just demonstrating that you are able to listen and you want to listen.
Thank you so much. Pete, and unless somebody has something very big to say, it is now 10 minutes before we have been forced to close. Let me tell you what's going to happen. We're going to shut down at 8:30, then we're going to go into another room and give you guys some light refreshments because, first of all, we're very grateful you turned up, and we bought them, so you better eat them. And then we're going to take the opportunity to clear out the room because they want the room by this time, blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to apologize now for the brevity of the session. We were expecting to go on longer. I will promise you now that we will revisit a lot quicker than I intended. I intended for the next session to probably be in 3 months' time. I will endeavor to get it a bit quicker so that we can finish this conversation because it ain't finished yet. Yeah, and I'm hoping you all would turn up. We're going to try and get a bigger place because I had to turn away a lot of people, even though some people still didn't turn up. Pete.
Thank you. I think what a lady said just now was that we should take the time and ask the question, but continue to ask. To continue to ask what's going on, what's happening with that individual. One thing that hasn't been said is that there's also the social isolation where people don't go out and contact other people, or they stay very quiet, or they can't talk. They have difficulty talking to other people, even people that they're close to them. In terms of what a person can do, because I work at, not doing my 9 to 5, I work in the evenings and weekends as well in a place called the Crisis Cafe. So the Crisis Cafe is a place where it's based in Hackney, where anyone can come in and walk in off the street and speak to one of the workers there about their issue. And a crisis could be anything from, losing your phone, your benefits being stopped, or your housing issues. Those little things can trigger a crisis in terms of where someone might feel suicidal. Because I see a lot of people who are suicidal, and they come to me and I talk with them. And the main thing that I try to instill at that point is a plan. So we come up with a plan of an action plan to deal with that crisis at that point. And I can't fix what's going on that's long term, but that plan, and also instill hope. And that is a fundamental factor for most people, where either they're going through a difficult part of their life, that long dark tunnel where the person said earlier, the young gentleman said that he's in a dark place, but it's like a tunnel. From my own experience, when I was in that tunnel and I had my family around me, my identical twin was there, but I couldn't talk to him or anyone about it. I just wanted to check out regardless. I just didn't care what was left behind. But so it's important that there's hope for the individual. So the other place that a person can go to is A&E. I know that people might have negative perceptions about certain places, but the most important thing is to seek help. So it's not about thinking, oh, if I go there, they're going to do this to me. If you're in a situation where you feel that, you're going to take your own life, you have to go and get help somewhere, anywhere. So if it's accident, emergency, if it's a place, there's a crisis cafe that exists where you live, or if it's speaking to a family member or somebody, speak and talk. And the people that are receiving the person, to be open, give them time to talk. Don't judge them in terms of why you're doing this, why you're doing that. Just do that. Pull up your socks. And then somebody might say, just do this and sort yourself out. It's not that easy. When you're going through a difficult time, it's not easy at all. It's very difficult and complex.
Thank you.
So a lot of good advice, a lot of good things being said, very brief. So it is about listening, and that's what's being said. And one thing the brother just said was about listening without judgment. So if you don't feel good, then that's where you're at, and just accept that that's where they're at. But I would also like to preempt, I think this is my last point anyway, well, two things, I suppose. One is, for me, some of the things I've heard, it's cyclical. This not feeling great is kind of cyclical. It's kind of normal to have low moods and go up. And so not to beat yourself up. And someone mentioned about labels. Lastly, preempt. So personally for me, I've got myself involved with a group called the Black Fathers Group. And this is particularly to black men, and for any women who know anyone else, young black men, attend a group, some kind of support group, because the amount of oppression and the abuse that we get on a daily basis, which is so subtle, you know, experience for me, people don't sit next to me on the bus. It's just this constant, and that's kind of what I want to add.
You know, it's clear. I smile at some of the stuff because I have enough time to tell you this. I can remember I used to live in New Cross, and I used to work in right by Hatton Gardens, and I worked there for 4.5 years. I used to take the 172 bus, and in my 3rd year of taking the 172 bus to work, a young black lady sat beside me, and I turned to her and I said to her, in 3 years, you are the first person to sit beside me on this bus. I said to her, I've watched people, my own people, scrunch up beside a man in a dirty overall, not knocking the man's a working man. Yeah, scrunch up. And I'm thinking to myself, you brush your teeth. You had a shower. And when you said what you said, it's funny, it's the constant bombardment. And when we do the next session, which we will, what we want to talk about is how comes me, Tony, whoever, get that constant bombardment and we go left and other brothers go right. Yeah? That's what I want to talk about when we get back together again. Before I forget, let me do a huge thanks to every single person in the room. Just by being here, you have contributed to this discussion. I want to say a separate thanks to the practitioners. They all simply came forward. I don't know none of them before today. Yep, they all came forward and they all volunteered of their time and their expertise to be here. I want to say thank you to the mom who rang me up, told me that what she wanted to do, to this lady here who came through another avenue to make sure she was here, to the people who said, look, I can't get here for 7, but I'm going to be here, and to all of you. People like Courtney. Courtney's involved in a whole lot of stuff. He could be somewhere else. He's not. He's here. I did check this video man earlier. Yeah, he walked up to me and offered. Yeah. And I want to say a special thank you to the 100 Black Men of London. Yeah. And I don't need to say including the women, because those of them who know me know when I say the 100 Black Men of London, I'm talking about the women as well. I don't need to qualify it. Let me tell you something. When I came here in 1989, I didn't know anybody. That man there, Tony Harrison, told me, you need to get a Facebook page if you want to do a business because nobody will know you. Well, he didn't say that. He's an English boy, so he can't talk good like me. Yep. And so I met Tony at the little place down by Tower Bridge. Used to be a little bar there where we had the very first meeting of the 100, and we're both founding members. The 100 is an obsession for me. It's an obsession for me. I don't care what anybody else wants to say about any other organization. The 100 is by far the best. We're not perfect. If we were perfect, we wouldn't be having this event because my brother there wouldn't have had the conversation he had, and I wouldn't have been led to do this. We're not perfect. but we're damn good at what we do. And especially the new crop of young guys who joined up over the last 3 to 4 years, they've created a tremendous vibe in the organization. So much so that old people like me can sort of lean back and let them lead from the front. And I wanted to say that to them especially because they have changed how this organization moves and how it works. Our new president, president-elect, now, I can't let you go and eat out the food before I say this. We need your support. And we need your support not just in terms of your hard cash. We have no shame. We want your money. Yeah? Let me just be straight. So the president-elect and the new VP of Finance, please speak to him about how you can financially help us. Let me be clear. UCL give us something in the range of 5 classrooms every fortnight to mentor the community. That's how many rooms we need with the amount of young people. Yesterday I got a call from a mother, can she send her child on our program? Answer is no, because we're full, we're way into the program now. We could do so much more with more money. The 100 is a registered charity. We are 100% transparent. None of us get paid a single penny for anything we do. In fact, almost every person in this room, especially the men, even though they give their dues, I can bet they're out of pocket beyond the dues that they pay. Our ladies, who are not required to pay dues, contribute money same way, sometimes more than us. We need your money. The last thing we need, and I never thought I'd say this in a public place, but I need a man. I got to tell you, when you come from Spanish Town, that's a hard thing to say. Actually, a lie. I need several men. That's how I'm rolling this year. Gentlemen, there are not 100 of us. And in a city like London, that is a shame and an embarrassment. Imagine what we could do if there were 100 of us paying that dues. Imagine what we could do. Just imagine. And let me tell you this, because they're going to give me a T sign, tell me it's time for me done. If the 100 is not your flavor, there are other men's organizations. Put your hand up, Courtney. Yeah, there are other male organizations doing the work. Don't join them, join 100. But if you have to, yeah, you have no excuse. There's a flavor and there's a variety of male organization out there that needs your help. Head that way to deal with the refreshments. Thank you very much. There will be a follow-up. If your email address is not already in the system, then make sure it is so that you hear about the next one. We'll get a bigger place and we will not allow them to chuck us out early.